Hello everyone, and welcome to the Vehicle and Animal Mounting System built for the Unreal Engine 4 game engine. For this tutorial, I am starting with the C++ third-person template. You can use the blueprint version, I just like C++ better. This template comes ready with a standard UE4 mannequin that we will be using as our character, a game mode that we're not really going to touch. But we will be creating a player controller and a new horse pawn that the character will be able to mount when we're finished. To begin with this, you're going to go to Unreal Engine and select the most current version of the engine and launch it. I already have it launched. So under New Project, I'm going to select C++ and use the third-person template, and then name your project. I have my own ugly robot horse that I will be using for demonstration purposes, but you can also use the Unreal Engine 4 buggy from the vehicle template. This one or this one. If you want to follow along with me more directly, you can download the starting project and the finished projects from Google Drive in order to follow along. By downloading the starting project, you will also get my ugly robot horse and the same handcrafted, terrible mannequin mounting animations that I'm going to be using for this. Ideally, as you are working on your own game, you will be using better models and animations. However, these work fine for demonstration purposes. Okay, so with the project open, we're going to go to your project's content folder. And if you haven't done so already, go ahead and create a blueprints folder. Inside the blueprints folder, we're going to create our 3 new blueprints that we're going to be using. The first one's going to be our character. This is the pawn that's going to represent our character itself, the one that will be mounting our horse. We're going to create another one. This time it'll be a player controller, and this will be the actual player controller that controls our character. Save those. Create another class. This will be our horse. Call this BP. I'll just call it BP horse. Save that. Now open up the horse. And we're going to set it up. So select mesh. And then I'm going to choose my ugly robot horse. And I'm going to choose the robot horse blueprint, animation blueprint. And then we're going to move this down 96 units, which that is not a magic number. That number is the half height of the capsule. And we're also going to rotate it -90 degrees. Let's open up the character. Mannequin, and then select the... No, not that one. Select the third-person anim blueprint. Also move this one down roughly, I think, -96, which looks a little low to me. We'll do 90. His feet look about right. We're going to rotate him 90 degrees, just like the horse, and save that. Okay, so now that we got the core classes, we're going to create the remaining classes. So go to Blueprints, and type Game Mode. We're going to create our Mounting Demo Game Mode in Blueprints, BP, Mounting Game Mode. And then we're going to save that. Then we're going to go ahead and create a blueprint interface. BPI _ Interactable Actor. Save that. Open up Mounting Game View. Set our BP player controller and our BP mounting character. Compile and save. Then we're going to set our mounting game point for this map. mounting game mode for this map. Run it. And as you can see, we have a functional player character. Okay, so we're going to set up our components now. There are 3 components that we're going to be hooking up to our 3 characters, or our 2 characters in our controller. First one's going to start with the mount. Go to Add Component and type Mountable Pawn Component. Rename that to Mountable Pawn Component, so it's a clear. Compile and save. We're going to go to Mounting Character, or we're going to add the Mount Rider component. Rename that Mount Rider component. Compile and save. And finally, we're going to go to, not the game mode, player controller. And we're going to add the Mount Rider controller component. And we're also going to rename that Mount Rider controller comp. No, I don't like that component. That way we stay consistent. Save and compile and save. And that is pretty much it for setting up the components. Okay, so we're going to set up the interfaces now. First by going to the horse and select Class Settings, and under the Interface panel, we're going to put the ADM Unified Controller Pawn Interface and the Mountable Pawn Interface. Both go on the horse. Compile and save that. Now we're going to open up the Mountable Character, Class Settings. We're going to add the Unified Controller Pawn Interface, and then the Mount Rider interface. There. Compile and save. And then let's go over to the player controller. Class settings. Add the Unified Controller Pawn interface, and then the controller interface, Rider controller interface. Compile and save. Okay, so now we're going to set up our Interactable Actor interface. It's the blueprint interface we created earlier. Now open that up, and we're going to create a new function called Interact. And we're going to put it under a special category of Mounting bar, Interfaces bar, Interaction. That way it looks like this whenever we go to look for it in our function properties, our function lists. Compile and save. Now we're going to set this up, not there. We're going to set this up on the horse, because the horse is our interactable actor. Class settings, and find BPI interactable actor. Okay, we're going to do one more thing with our interactable actor. Open that up, and we need to add a new parameter going in. That's going to be called Instigating Actor. And it's going to be of type Actor. Type in Actor, and just select it as a reference, compile, and save. We're going to add one more thing. We're going to output parameter, a Boolean success is what we're going to call it. That way it shows up in the function lists. Compile and save, and there we go. Now we're going to set up our horse skeletons so that we have mountable locations for the players whenever they want to mount. So go to your mounts, animation, or you want to find your mount skeleton. In this case, this is my horse, the robot horse skeleton. And then on the robot horse, we're going to be setting up the spine as a socket for the character to attach to with the seats. So just to show you, we're going to get in a position roll here. So we're going to work with this bone, which is spine 2, and this bone, which is spine 3. And on spine 3, that's where the driver is going to be sitting. So we're going to rename this S driver seat. And then on O2, we're going to create a new socket. And we're going to rename it S_passenger seat. Now, these bones are kind of aligned funny because that's how Blender works. I make everything in Blender. And you have to kind of tweak these sockets. I know the magic numbers for them, so I'm just going to type them in. I need to rotate this -34 degrees and -90 degrees on the z-axis. So that straightens out the rotation. And then we need to move it up a little bit. This is where the characters, effectively their pelvis will be sitting. And we need that to be a little higher than where the spine is. The passenger seat is almost good as it is. So we're going to just go over there. And then we're going to just rotate it -90 so it's facing the right direction. And then we're going to raise it up. Or actually push it forward and then raise it up. So save. And that's it for setting up the sockets for the characters to attach to. Okay, so now we're going to set up our animation blueprint for our mounting character, the Mannequin. So go to the Mannequin, open up animations, and then here you'll see I have several montages that I've already set up. And they're going to be used for mounting and unmounting. So you can see my mounting animation there. It is set to the default group slot, or the default slot under the default group. And that's pretty much it. So we have a mount left, a mount right, a dismount left, and a dismount right. They're not all pretty, and some of them are pretty rushed, but we're going to be focusing on the dismount left and dismount right. So open up third-person anim BP. So once the third-person anim blueprint is opened, go to the anim graph right here, and then select the default state machine. We're going to go into there and perform some editing. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a new variable called isMounted. Compile and save. Then we're going to grab all of these animation states and just right click and cut them. We're going to save those in the memory. We're going to create a new state called on ground states. Then drag this off, and another new state called on mounted states. We need to connect that back. So in this connection, we're just going to drag out isMounted and plug that right in. So for isMounted, we'll go to the on isMounted states. Oops. Save that. Compile. And then in this transition, we're going to say it is mounted and boolean not, or not boolean. Boolean version of not. Just plug that right in there. There we go. Save. So now that that's set up, now we're going to create another state machine within this node. And we're going to call it ground states. Just going to plug that right in there. And then we're going to paste all of those states that we cut from earlier. If I can grab it here. There we go. And then we need to connect it. There we go. File, save. All right, so now we're back up and running on the grounded states. So this is your basic movement state. You know, we could have transitions here between the ungrounded states and unmounted states, but I'm using montages for that. Inside the unmounted states, we're going to create another state machine, but this one's going to be pretty simple, but it could be more complicated, and I like to build things with expansion in mind later. I'm going to call it mounted states, and we're just going to hook that up like so. Compile, save. Yes, nothing in there. Drag this out, new state, and we'll call it mounted. No, wait. Idle mounted, because right now you're just going to be idle mounted for everything. So with this done, I'm going to asset browser and drag in our mounted animation. Plug that in. Compile and save. For the most part, this is all set up and ready to go. And you can test it by clicking the isMounted boolean flag there. You see our character goes into a mounted stance. And when you uncheck that, he goes back to his normal walking mode. So now we're going to play with this, and we're going to disconnect this node, and we're going to drag it up here. And we're going to well, hold on. We're going to rename this as locomotion states. And then we're going to cache this pose for later. Just call this locomotion. Locomotion. There we go. We're going to say use cached pose locomotion. And we're going to run this through the animontage slot, the default slot. So if there's an animontage playing on the default slot, all of the locomotion animation is going to be overridden by what's being played in that slot. And you can apply special blends and things like that later in the more advanced locomotion stuff, but we're not going to do that here. I like to put comments around things, so to kind of help step myself bit by bit through these, as animation blueprints can get pretty impressive. So the first one's we're going to get a locomotion, and the second we're going to apply any currently running full body montage to the current animation. Compile and save. And we see we're still testing, and it works perfectly fine. We can go in the air, we can go as mounted, we're all good. Okay, so with that out of the way, we're going to set up our event graph to actually set is mounted. And this is the beauty of interfaces, is that you don't have to do any crazy casts to actually get them to work. So just plug that in there. And then you grab the is mounted, set, plug it in. And now we have the is mounted variable being set every time the animation is updated. We can play around and see, make sure that works. Compile and save, and we're good to go. So that's it for the first part of the tutorial. This is all just about setup and getting ready for the next part, where we're going to actually implement the interfaces and hook up the various mounting components so that we actually have a working system. So join me on the next video, part 2, where we go over that.